Hello and welcome into Running for Coverage. This is episode 16, and today we will be visiting with one of the two Jacksonville runners who will be competing in the U.S. Olympic Marathon Trials in February in Orlando, just weeks away. We have already heard from Kelsey Pontius, who will be competing for the second time, and today we'll be talking with Sem Sultanov, who will be making his first appearance in the U.S. Olympic Marathon Trials, and fairly recent to marathons in general, but certainly has been a mainstay on the running scene in Jacksonville for quite some time. He was a standout at Mandarin High School and then at UNF, and has won the first Coast Cup at the Gate River Run. Did that back in, 2021, and comes from a great running family. His mom ran in the Olympics in 1996 for Russia. Also is a three-time marathon winner in the professional ranks. His dad was also an outstanding runner as well. So Sem comes from some great running stock, to be sure. He also won the Jacksonville Ameris Marathon in December. That was his first marathon win, and certainly great to have him do that here at home. But he qualified for the Olympic Marathon trials by running 2 hours, 17 minutes, 9 seconds at the McKidrey Micro Marathon in Valley Cottage, New York. He finished 22nd in October, and that qualified him for the U.S. Olympic trials. So we'll be hearing from him on his preparation, on what his expectations are for the trials, and so much more. A reminder here to please, if you haven't already, sign up for our newsletter. You can go to runningforcoverage.com, or you can find us on our Facebook page, and that'll give you a link to sign up for our weekly newsletter, which includes updates from what's happening around the world of running in Jacksonville, as well as some opportunities for you to save some money with race entry fees, save money on gas, and some other offers as well. And be sure to follow us. We're on Instagram and also, as we mentioned, on Facebook. So if you want to stay connected to the running community, please do so. This past Thursday, we also debuted a social run from Grace Note Brewing, which is, I don't know how to categorize this part of town. It's sort of semi-Avondale, semi-Ortega. It's the area where the Loop and High Tide Burrito are, and there's some boating businesses over in the area. But Grace Note Brewing is a new local brewery that's recently opened, and every other Thursday night there will be a social run held there, where your first beer is free after you complete the run. So we look forward to seeing many of you there. I know some of you who are listening right now were probably there for the debut run. We had a great time during and after as well. So thank you so much for those who participated in that, and we'll have more information on that to be found on our website as well. So without further ado, let's hear from Sem Sultanov as he prepares for the U.S. Olympic Marathon Trials. Well, as mentioned, Jacksonville will be well represented at the Olympic Marathon Trials. We've talked quite a bit with Kelsey Pontius on the women's side. And of course, on the men's side, we'll see Sem Sultanov, who has once again continued just to put up great numbers. The last time I think I talked with Sem was on the broadcast of the Gate River Run, when he won the first Coast Cup as the fastest local runner. So good to catch up. Let me start with the Olympic trials. We'll work for some other things, but clearly this, getting that Olympic qualifying time was trials qualifying time was a big thing for you. Were you pointing to a specific time or a specific event where you thought, all right, this is when I'm gonna get that time, and how did it all play out?
Yeah, I mean, I had a couple of plan A, plan B, plan C kind of thing. I mean, when I debuted a little bit over a year ago in the marathon, I didn't know how it would play out, but I knew if training went well and if the race went well, I probably could run, under that trials qualifier time at that point, which was the Grandma's Marathon. It didn't play out that way. I ended up debuting at 2:21:50, and yeah, I was on course for maybe a little bit over halfway, and then legs just hit a wall, and I was not able to run as well as I wanted to. But my plan B was the McCurdy Micro, which was where I ended up actually qualifying. that was my plan B. And I didn't really, after having such high expectations, my first marathon, didn't, I tried to come into this race without any specific goal. I guess the only goal I wanted was 2:17:59. So I was not trying to be very cocky. I told myself I know I can run faster probably, but if I run 0.0001 under the time, I'll be happy. Um, so that was my plan B, and obviously I ended up hitting it. And then my plan C, if that didn't work out, which thank God it did, was CIM of for this year, or I guess 2023. And that was on the last day of qualifying. So I know that some guys end up actually qualifying, which is amazing, but I didn't really want to be on that cusp at that point because if you tried so many times and you failed, it's you go into those races kind of doubting yourself. So I mean, yeah, for once the only time I really wanted at that point was 2:17:59.999.
Whatever it takes, right? Just get under that number.
Yeah.
When you talk about the marathon, I mean, it's different than if you're trying to qualify with a 5K time or even a 15K with a river run. That's a race you'll run. You can figure out what it's going to be. Even in training, though, you're not running 26.2, right? You might run, what do you run up to 20 or 21 maybe in training. So how confident were you that you were going to be able to get to that number, particularly with a relatively few number of marathons under your belt?
Um, yeah, like you said, it's not a race that um you can really gauge 100% of how you're going to feel. Um, so what kind of made this specific build, when I end up hitting the qualifying time, the difference was I didn't get injured and I stayed very consistent. Um, before for my very first marathon, and just um, I end up doing actually I call not official marathons for me, some races that just were not there from the start, and the builds were not there. I did the Houston full, but I ran like 2:40 something. But for all those races, and especially my 2:21:50, I had little pains and I just wasn't 100%. So one way I knew that I would have a good shot of qualifying is if I stayed consistent and if I stayed injury free, which I ended up doing. I had some great workouts. I was not, you know, um, I didn't do anything crazy impressive, I would say, for the standards that I put for myself, but I was able to hit every single week like I wanted to, averaged over 100-mile weeks every week for whatever weeks I ended up doing. I think it was close to 3 months of pretty much over 100-mile weeks, and that consistency kind of gave me the confidence that I know that I have the talent. I have some good workouts, and I'm not injured, so I think I'll be able to hit it, and that's kind of what I was telling myself, and ended up playing out in my favor.
Staying healthy, obviously, is such a big part of this. There are so many really outstanding runners, but in the course of building up to an Olympic trials or a national championship, what have you, where an injury just will slow them down. When it's the Olympic trials, boy, it really puts a lot of pressure on it because if it doesn't happen this time, you've got 4 more years to wait for. It's not just one more year where you can get back to it. Did you feel the pressure of that being one every 4 years, and particularly as you're a relatively young marathon runner by marathon runner standards, but still, did you think, hey, there's a lot on the line here as you were going through those 100-mile weeks?
Uh, for sure. I mean, for me, I want to take running as far as I can take it. And I know that, just even qualifying is a great step for me. So I knew that I wanted that on my resume, and I knew that I can do it, but I needed to hit the time. So, I mean, yeah, there was some pressure, for sure, but I, I knew I could do it. It was just one of those things where, when every, everything didn't go as planned, when I ran my first marathon, when I ran the 2:20:50, I knew off of how poor, I guess, my training was for that and how close I still was relatively. I knew that, if I have even a 80% training block, I will be able to hit it. But, you still think about, like you said, it's only it's every 4 years. So if you don't hit it, then you can't say that you've qualified at least.
Yeah, I've asked this question of some great runners, Mark Burgett and Keith Brantley and Kelsey and others about when you're out there, whether it's a race, especially when it's a race, but even if it's a long run in training and you feel like you may not have it, whether it's your body telling you that or it's your mind telling you that. How do you deal with it? How do you cope with that, knowing what, especially in training, that you have an ultimate goal of trying to get to a certain point, but you also know you have all these weeks or months leading up to the ultimate race?
I try not to think about all the little stuff, when they come. I mean, I try to kind of just see I guess you could say, the bigger picture. I mean, I keep telling myself, if anything pops up, you can do it pretty much. And it's just one of those things where, if stuff is not necessarily going your way, it's not the big of a deal. It's the consistency. It's the day on, all the days put together. So if that's kind of what I tell myself. It's if you can stay consistent, then everything is gonna be fun.
You give yourself some grace that a bad day is allowable and you're going to have it at some point, and sometimes you just write it off as all right, there's the bad day this month.
Yeah, yeah, and I, I'm like everyone else. I mean, I feel like a lot of people, you know, if you are a perfectionist and you know, you always want to have a good day. Um, so I try to, if like I've had, let's say for the training block that I had, for the New York race, where I end up qualifying. I've had some long runs where, in by my standards, I didn't necessarily hit the marks that I wanted to, but you know, those runs that, let's say, I was not able to hit the pace, I was able to practice, the mental strength. I was able to practice, let's say, fluids. So I always try to kind of take away, if okay, if by these specific standards, okay, maybe the pace was not correct, okay, maybe it was a failure, but okay, let's see, okay, what can I say that, what did I actually get out of the workout or the race or whatever. And usually you're able to find something good, even if there's not too many. And if you're able to, then have that mindset of, okay, I didn't get this, but at least I got this type of experience, then, you know, it's going to be fine. Like I, um, when I ran the Houston Marathon, like I said, that I don't even consider a race for myself, like on the marathon list, um, I ran 2:42, I think. And that whole race, I mean, I was off pace after 3 miles. I was injured. I wanted to go, hotels were booked. I was going with my coach. We wanted to go. So I knew it was not going to be probably a good race for me, but like one thing I didn't drop. I mentally, I was could have very easily just said, whatever, let's just walk it out. Um, and I ended up practicing fluids. I brought gels with me. I took all my gels. I took water. I drafted off people for how slow I was going for myself. But at least I took that, positive from that race. So, like I said, if you're able to take something out of it, not every day is going to be a good day. Your body is sometimes going to say no, and if that happens, that happens. Obviously, try to have as little of those days as possible, but if it happens, it's okay.
Well, and I was thinking too, in a marathon, I mean, if you're doing these things in a 5K, you can run the 5K again next week, and you may learn something from a bad 5K. Um, Sometimes the 5K can be as painful, right, depending on how you run it. Um, but in a marathon, you're gonna have to wait a while. So do
Yeah,
you take lessons from if you run a half marathon or a 10K? Are there lessons to be learned for the marathon within shorter races?
I think so for sure. I would say less. I mean, I take every race kind of at this point, since I'm gauging toward the marathon. I try to take every race that I do, even if it's an off distance, as you know, a gauge of how I'll feel in the marathon. I mean, for 5Ks, maybe it's turnover, or maybe it's just how fluid I feel. Um, I would say for half marathon, let's say, especially those distances, it's how well can your body feel for, obviously, that's the halfway point. So you kind of have to think, but okay, if I'm able to take in X amount of fluids and feel pretty good, or if I can go this pace for okay the halfway distance, I try to say okay, then maybe for whatever amount of weeks or months that I have for the actual race for the marathon, you know, okay, I'm in a good spot or I'm in a bad spot or what I need to work on. So I mean, yeah, for sure. I mean, I feel like for the marathon, the half marathons, maybe 10 milers that we have in Jacks, those type of races, 10Ks maybe, those are the ones that I really focus on for the marathon because again, those are how your body reacts for the longer distance. Because I mean, 5K at this point it's very easy. I mean, especially if you're not necessarily going all out sometimes. But let's say the 10 milers, half marathons, 10Ks maybe, it's how your body's able to react for those longer distances. And if, let's say, you're falling off a pace or you're not feeling as fluent or whatever it might be, then that's a problem. Then, you have to work on it because the marathon, I mean, it doesn't start even a halfway. Probably, I mean, most good marathoners would probably say that the actual race starts at 20 miles. So I mean, the amount of times people probably say, I felt great until mile 16, or I felt great at halfway. I mean, yeah, you were just not ready, So, yeah, so yeah,
There's so many lessons that can be learned and that need to be applied for a marathon. From my observation, um, whether you're talking about the training or nutrition or your on course, hydration and nutrition, what sleep patterns, all these things. I wonder how much you have taken from your parents, who are both athletes, and how much have you taken from other sources in terms of trying to refine sort of what you believe is the best plan for you going into a marathon.
yeah. I mean, I like you said, I was born in a family of runners. My mom, my dad, both professional runners. On my mom's side, a lot of endurance athletes. If that's cross country skiing or whatever that might be, we have a lot of runners as well. I mean, you always try to take in something, right? I mean, my mom's an Olympian. My dad was, his PR in the half marathon was 103. I mean, my mom had the master's course record for Boston for a lot. I don't know the exact number, a lot of years. I mean, she's either top 10, top five at every marathon you can think of. So you take a lot, or you try to at least take a lot of knowledge. I mean, yeah, I mean, one right now, um, one thing that I take from my mom is the one key factor she always talks about is like I was saying, the consistency. I mean, to not really think about a singular workout and get extremely happy or extremely sad about something. So that's the one thing I try to always perfect myself is because I think about running 24/7, and it's not always good. So I would say that that's the one thing I obviously taken from my mom and tried to perfect it. And then, I mean, one thing I try to always look at is obviously other runners that are not part of my family but are close friends. Keith Brantley, I mean, that's someone that my mom's good friends with, and my mom ran with his wife for a pretty long time back in the day. So, I mean, when I started to train after my first marathon with Keith a little bit, he was kind of my mentor and kind of a coach at one point. One thing we've talked about is kind of rest is still training. I mean, I'm very good at, I guess you could say, punishing myself and going weeks and weeks of really hard training. But I feel like with a lot of runners that are like that, they hate off days. They hate recovery days. They hate not grinding every single day. So that's one thing I definitely try to take in from Keith. I mean, he's tried to put that, install that to me. And then just everyone else. I mean, that's just something I feel like a lot of people say. It's like easy days easy, hard days hard. That's something I hear from everyone, but that's for sure something I try to, put into my training.
At what point, and maybe it happened, in high school at Mandarin or at UNF or wherever, did you realize, hey, this could be something that could be not only a big part of my life in terms of the focus mentally, but something that I could really compete in at a high level. I suspect that having the family you do, that probably came earlier than it does for a lot of people, particularly distance running.
Yeah, I mean, probably. I mean, I would say it started. So my freshman year, we actually lived in Gainesville. So I went to Gainesville High School, went to GHS, and I had very sporadic training, but I was still able to run very well. And so my coach there, and obviously my mom, I mean, that kind of shows like, okay, so you have some raw talent. That's kind of the one thing that probably makes you think like, okay, maybe I can do this on a higher level than some people, is when you do the least amount of training, but then you're able to still perform higher than it seems like a lot of people in your position. So it probably started my freshman year. I mean, probably my sophomore year when I got to Mandarin into Mandarin high school. Yeah, that probably showed the most when I started to run. I mean, at the time for me, a 420 in the mile, um, 155 or something like that in the 800. Like I was like, okay, maybe that I'll be able to perform well, because a lot of those races I ran local against pretty much just myself, and I was like, okay, thinking, okay, if I get some harder training in, if I'm able to perform on bigger stages, then I could probably take it farther than some of my competitors.
When you saw that the Olympic trials were going to be in Orlando, what was your reaction? And then what was your reaction when they initially said noon start? Are you a guy who likes to run in the heat, and did you think that was going to be an advantage for you, or are you happy with the move back to 10 a.m.?
I mean, hearing that it's from Orlando, it's like a bittersweet. It's obviously it's great because it's so close, so you have an advantage with the climate, with I mean the humidity and the heat that everyone's talking about. I mean, it's definitely different. Anyone who lives in Florida and then goes anywhere else, the heat that everyone else talks about, the humidity that everyone else talks about, it's not the same, and it's hard to describe. So it was great in that aspect, but then it's also felt like, okay, I'm going to qualify, and it seems like it's just a trip down the road. So it's like it doesn't seem like it's that big of a deal in a way, but you still have to qualify. So it's still very nice to have a venue, and it's so close. Um, about the noon start, I didn't really think about it too much, to be honest. At that point, it's like everyone's going to race at the same time, so it's not like you're getting the bad, luck of the draw. It's everyone's going to run at the same time. So if you're going to suffer, someone else is going to suffer. So at that point, you just got to train as hard as you can. And if your body was not ready for that heat, then you were just never ready. But once it got moved to 10 a.m., I mean, I was definitely happy because it moved to 10 a.m. once I already qualified for the race. So I was already thinking, okay, I have a good amount of time to still get a good training block in and perform, hopefully at my best at the day of the race. So, you know, I'll be foolish to say that I would think that I would have the same result at noon versus 10 a.m. I mean, 10 a.m. is definitely a lot better.
Yeah, time might be different, place might be the same, who knows? But you would think maybe a slight advantage for you being, having lived in Florida and training here. I wonder how you look at the Gate River Run in a year where there is an Olympic qualifying for you. The Gate will come about a month after the Olympic trials. Are you thinking about your schedule beyond Orlando?
Yeah, yeah. So I'm already. I don't like to think too far ahead. But when such a big race is happening in Jacksonville, and it's so close to Orlando, you still have to think about, what your options are. I mean, I'm already registered. I'm um I'm thinking, if based on how I felt after New York, um, after the marathon, I can recover very well after marathons. It's just based on the few marathons that I've done, and I think if I perform well to the standard that I put myself at, I think it's going to be a good. I can ride the momentum to the Gate River Run and perform well. I mean, everyone kind of knows I'm a I got my bachelor's in mechanical engineering. I love numbers, and if you look at every year and you look at the patterns, most people know when you're going to have a very deep field versus when you're going to have a weaker field. And you never want to, I guess, run against a weaker field. But I would say this year it's the top three, top five averages in terms of time don't change a lot. Those are those are the top guys that they don't care when it is, they're going to show up and they're going to run very well. But if you're someone like me who wants to kind of prove themselves and get top 10, whatever it might be, those are the years. And I would think that it being so close to the trials and it being an Olympic year, um, I think it's going to be a weaker field, for sure. So it's for me personally, I think that if I run well at Orlando and I kind of ride the wave, I think I can run the best I've ever ran at the Gabriel run.
I'm going to put some words in your mouth here, but do you think in the back of your mind, hey, what would it be like for a Jacksonville guy to win that race? And is it possible? Of
Oh, I think it's definitely possible. Um, but again, it's easier said than done, I guess.
course.
But yeah, that's in the back of my mind. I mean, one of my goals is obviously, steps. I mean, one of my goals is obviously get top 10, be that guy that can consistently get top 10. Um, and then yeah, be in contention to win. I mean that this race is so different than so many other races because of the bridge at the end,
Mhm.
um, the weather that you can always get. Because I mean, a couple years ago, the one year that I got in the top local, it was right after COVID, and it was extremely windy and all of this stuff. And then the next year was a little bit different. And then this past gate, it was extremely hot. You so if you are consistently in that top 10, those guys, I mean, anything can happen. So it's in the back of my mind, but little steps, I guess.
Yeah, first things first, the Olympic trials are something you probably ought to get as much focus as you can on. We're recording this less than a month before the Olympic trials, and I'm wondering what your training and taper plan is as we get closer. How much are you putting in from a mileage standpoint? When do you really back it off?
Yeah, so next week will be my last week of hard training. I taper 2 weeks out, so including the race weeks. So that will be my second week of taper. Yeah, the mileage has been around the same as it was for New York in terms of the build, a little bit over 100 miles averages. Um, you know, some I don't really take too many down weeks. So with the down weeks considered, a little bit over 100 miles in terms of averages, and then I do, yeah, once the 2 week taper starts, I shut it down pretty much completely. Um, Mileage is going to be, it always differs. I mean, the second to last week will be maybe 70, maybe 70 miles, maybe a little bit more, maybe a little bit less. And then I'll probably still do two workouts that week. But for me, I don't consider marathon training that hard if you don't have a lot of mileage under your legs, because it's just the paces are not that fast. So those workouts I don't even count as, I guess, money in the bank. Is just kind of getting the legs rolling. And then race week is go time. I mean, I don't that week I don't even know how many miles I run, but it's probably very little. Um,
What has
but
your
it's worked.
nutrition changed in the last couple of weeks before a marathon?
Um, I love carbs. So for me, I mean, yes. So nutrition wise, I mean, I try to take in as many carbs as possible, as possible. I love pasta, I love pizza, so that's predominantly a
It's
lot
easy
of what I
work
eat.
for
I
you
mean,
then.
yeah. So it's salad. It doesn't really change too much between race week and hard weeks. I try to keep that stuff the same. For me, I don't have like a dietitian background or anything like that, but obviously I'm not stupid. I know what's good nutrition versus what's bad. Um, I don't know any specific facts. I've obviously about numbers, but I know, you know, I have fun with my training, so I don't have anything that's necessarily off limits for my diet if I want something, but I keep a pretty strict diet in terms of, not going too far. drinking drinking soda and eating candy all day. That's it's nothing like that. But my diet doesn't really change too much. I mean, yeah, I'll probably eat more carbs before once the race comes closer and closer. But other than that, I mean, it's all the same. I'll
Well,
eat a full pizza before a workout, and that's all I'll eat.
so I was going to ask you how what your recovery looks like from a nutrition standpoint, but my guess is more pizza.
Yeah, mom kind of hates it because yeah, like she she likes carbs, but you know pizza sometimes has a stigma, like a bad stigma, like knowing thinking that's like it's a bad food or anything like that. But I try to keep it simple with the pizza I eat. I mean, I'll eat like a cheese pizza or something like that. Nothing too crazy. But yeah, that's pretty much it. Cheese pizza or pasta. That's the two ways that it usually goes.
What, as far as the trials are concerned, what would be successful for you? Obviously, getting in is a success, but do you have a thought of here's what I'd like to do, here's my goal?
Yeah, I mean, being in a race like this where so much is on the line for some people in terms of place, um, for me, place is obviously not top three or top 10. You always have to be realistic with yourself. But I would say um, crack, you know, the top 80, top 50, something like that. I don't know a specific number. Place is probably the least of my worries. If I run the time goal that I have in mind, which I'll get into that, I don't care if I'm the last guy. Because I feel like for my success as a runner, improving myself, not just to myself, but potential sponsors is how fast I can run. So I would say time goal is definitely something I'm going to gauge my success on that race with. Um, and that would be a PR. I mean, my PR is 2:17:09, so it's so close to sub 2:17. So seeing a 2:16 in there, that would already, again, smaller goals, just like I had for New York to qualify, 2:17:59. For me, 2:16:59 will be already a success. Um, I would say that anything faster, I would not be surprised, but it's not really on in my mind. Um, I know that I can run very well. My training has been going, I would say, knock on wood, more a lot more perfect than it was from New York, and New York was very close to perfect. But I would say even more consistent, even harder training, and all of that training coming a lot more effortlessly than it was for New York for when I qualified. So I would say, yeah. I mean, anything faster than 2:16:59 uh, or 2:16:59, it would be success for me. But anything faster, it could happen, but we'll see.
Yeah, you don't want to overshoot it. You still want to have real, a goal you can attain. But boy, you never
Yeah,
know. Again, Florida guy running in the Florida heat. That could
yeah.
add up to a good result. Well, Sem, thank you so much for taking some time out here on Running for Coverage. We'll be following you closely, along with Kelsey down at the trials to get some good Jacksonville representation. So best of luck there, and we'll certainly see you back here for the gate.
Thank you.
You can really tell how methodical a thinker Sem is. Goes with his engineering background, and there are so many engineers and folks who have that very structured mental approach who make great distance runners. Sometimes you get some very creative thinkers too, but boy, for whatever reason, you can find some great runners and ultra runners, marathoners, what have you, who have that sort of engineer's mind or that very structured mind. And I'm not sure exactly what it is that makes it possible, but it certainly does seem that that is a big deal for that as well. All right, we're looking forward to the Gate River Run coming up in just over a month, March the 2nd. We'll have more on that as we get closer to the biggest race in Jacksonville. For now, thank you so much for listening to Running for Coverage.